All right, joining us now, Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida. He was in that hearing yesterday with Kristi Noem on House Judiciary. She got quite a grilling. Congressman, what do you think of this firing?
Well, thanks for having me. First, let me congratulate former Homeland Security Secretary on her appointment to be the shield of the Americas, which I'm pretty sure the president came up with when he watched the last Avengers movie. So, we'll find out what that entails. But look, she will go down as the worst Secretary of Homeland Security since the creation of it after 9/11. I mean, she literally took the president's core issue on immigration, which he was polling at 60% in September, and got that down to 39%. She exceeded all expectations on doing that by, having 2 Americans shot, one in the face and one in the back under her leadership. They had to bring in Tom Homan and leave Minnesota as a result of her actions. I'm a former emergency management director for the state of Florida. She has completely destroyed FEMA, gutted that agency. She didn't make it faster. She didn't reform it. She didn't make it better. She made it absolutely solitary worse. And the level of corruption that I think we're going to find out when Democrats eventually take back the House and look into this is going to be staggering of the stuff that went on over there. So look, I think the country wanted a national divorce from her on biblical grounds, and the president is giving that to us. I'm glad he found his old apprentice self, by the way, and decided to fire someone.
All right, so how do you feel about Markwayne Mullin?
Well, I don't know the senator that well, but I will tell him he's inheriting a mess. It's a disaster over there. At Homeland. I talked to folks in all sorts of different departments. And so he has his job cut out for him because of the wave of destruction that Kristi Noem is leaving him. So I wish him good luck, obviously. I think there's an opportunity for him to try to fix the department, clean it up, reform it, and try to heal the country based on the division that Kristi has done over there. So, look, we'll see what he does. Do
you think that's what the president wants? For him to change the department, change the policy, do things differently?
Well, I guess they could continue what they're doing. I mean, if their approval is at 39% on immigration, I guess they could go to 29%. I mean, there's always that opportunity.
The hearing yesterday was a tough one for Kristi Noem. What did you try to get out of her?
Well, I spent a lot of time on FEMA, being the only former emergency management director in Congress, someone who did it for a Republican governor, by the way, did it because it's a nonpartisan. We help people in their time of need. Disasters affect Americans. They don't affect just Democrats or just Republicans. And so I focused a lot on FEMA, the FEMA report that was supposed to come out that she's hidden and she destroyed. I focused a lot on the programs over at FEMA that she's destroyed. But obviously we wanted to focus on her credibility, which was completely shot in the Senate hearing the day before. She lied about the contract. She lied about Corey Lewandowski being involved in the approval of those contracts. I think she lied about how the advertising contract got awarded and whether some of her friends made a bunch of money on that, whether that was a no-bid contract. And I think she also didn't tell the truth, saying the president approved it. And so I think both hearings, both in the Senate and in the House, were a debacle. What's interesting is that you had Democrats and Republicans, right, in the Senate and in the House, asking her questions about this, trying to get her on the record. And I think the president watched that, and I think that was the final nail in the coffin.
My apologies, I don't have you queued up, but I do have your colleague, Congressman Neguse, queued up regarding these contracts, and specifically the one that had to do with the TV commercials that she cut and how much money she spent. I think it's my numbers are all getting mixed up. I think it's $200 million, maybe it's $100 million. The contract was pretty pricey. She was asking how that contract, or he was asking how that contract was awarded and who this company was that got it. Let's listen.
You want the American people to believe that this is all above board?
Yes,
that $143 million of taxpayer money just happened to go to this one company that doesn't have a headquarters, doesn't have a website, has never done work for the federal government before, and is registered, apparently, or attached to a residence from a political operative. And of course, one of the subcontractors of that contract, as you know, is a political firm that's tied to you back when you were governor of South Dakota. We all understand the argument that you've made, that somehow this ad campaign on Fox News of you at Mount Rushmore has led to millions of people self-deporting. You're using millions of dollars of taxpayer money in this way, it is fraud, and ultimately, I think there's going to be accountability.
He also points out earlier in that exchange that the company that got that first $120-something odd million contract didn't exist until days before the contract was awarded, didn't even have a website, didn't have a headquarters. If Democrats are able to take back the House and the Senate, whatever ends up happening, is there a way to get that money back for the American people?
The answer to that, obviously, that will have to be that'll have to be looked into. It'll have to be investigated. Yeah, the company was so qualified to get the contract, they were only formed 11 days before it was awarded. No headquarters, no website. I mean, listen, the American people know that smells bad. By the way, the president thought it smelled bad also, which is why I think he was talking to Senator Kennedy. Said that he spoke to the president about it. Because Kristi Noem said that the president had approved awarding a contract to a company that didn't exist 11 days before they awarded it, and so. Yeah, look, I think there was a lot of stuff that was going on over there, but let's not forget, the 2 Americans who were killed in the streets of America at the hands of her folks. And I think that's also what Senator Tillis was trying to say. Senator Tillis was trying to say, like, look, you shot your puppy in the face. You then went and killed your family goat. You wrote about it. You thought it was a teachable moment. And that's why you reacted the same way you reacted when those Americans were killed, and you called them domestic terrorists, which they weren't, and lied about it. So look, finally justice for Cricket.
Yeah, bad decision-making, bad leadership is what he said. I see you're wearing your Justice for Cricket pin today. Senator Kennedy just reacted to this. Let's play it.
I heard the secretary say that she went to the president and said, I propose to spend $250 million on television advertisements in which I am the star. And that the president thought that was a swell idea. That's what I heard the secretary say. From my perspective, her version of the truth and the president's version of the truth are decidedly different.
Yeah, he's calling her a liar there, Congressman.
Yeah, she lied. I mean, I happen to believe the president on this one. I think she lied. I think Senator Kennedy asked a very simple question, and then he was surprised by her answer, and he kept pulling that thread. And she walked right into an accidental trap. Did the president approve it? All she had to say is, well, we don't run those things up to the president. But she didn't. She laid it in the president's lap. And so, I think her answer to that question is a lot of why we have the result today and why she's now the former Secretary of Homeland.
Her firing, does that mean that the House should vote to reopen the government, to reopen DHS, to fund DHS back, or do you want to wait and see how Markwayne Mullins' tenure goes?
Well, look, I don't think it's a one-to-one where now that she's gone, it reopens. But I think it's an opening to allow the dialogue to start up again. I think we were nowhere so long as she was there. You're not going to vote for policy and then think that she's going to implement it. So I think now that she's gone, I think this provides an opportunity for Democrats and Republicans to get to the table, to figure out if there are policies we can agree on and get the department reopened.
Do you still need... are you going to get anywhere with those policies? Not just the wearing of body cams, but the taking off the masks, the no judicial warrants. Those are things that Democrats had wanted. Republicans were saying no, specifically, to those last two. Do those negotiations still include those new measures?
Well, look, I'm not a part of those negotiations. Those are going on in the Senate, obviously, because they don't need our votes in the House. So that's going to be up to the senators. But again, what I would say is we should not abandon our principles or our policies. We should go when we should negotiate and we should argue for them. But I think this provides a fresh opening now to get to the table and reopen this for all the employees at DHS that are now not getting a paycheck because of Kristi Noem. They're suffering because of her, and they're out there doing their job. So let's take this opportunity. Let's try to get a deal, try to reopen DHS, but also try to protect Americans from the stuff that Kristi Noem was doing in Minnesota.
I'm going to borrow your time just for a moment longer. I want to play a little bit of you yesterday questioning Noem on Corey Lewandowski.
You've called Corey Lewandowski a special government employee. I understand what government means. I understand what employee means, okay? But I don't know what makes him special. Now, I want to give you an opportunity to answer on the record to Ms. Kamlager-Dove's question. I know you said it's garbage, and it may be, but I really think you need to say the word no into the record so that you can clear that up.
I think the ridiculousness of this and the tabloids that you are quoting and referencing are insane. And this has been...
So that's a no?
He has an advisor to the Department of Homeland Security, has no decision-making
Madam Secretary, do you want to correct it, yes or no? You don't want to correct it? Fine.
Decision-making authority,
hold on.
no role in
not a problem. According to one of the FEMA administrators that you fired, there is nothing, including contracts, that is brought to you that he hasn't reviewed. In fact, a significant amount of DHS internal routing documents has his signature on it above deputy secretaries. Okay, that former FEMA administrator wasn't fired by you, the secretary. He was fired by Corey. It was Corey that called him into your office. It was Corey that made him to submit to a polygraph test. The $100,000 spending rule that you created that comes to your desk, you're not even sitting at your desk. It's Corey who's sitting there.
There was also reporting, by the way, that Corey Lewandowski fired I think a Coast Guard pilot because when they switched planes, he didn't take Kristi Noem's blanket with them, only to rehire that pilot when nobody else was around to fly the plane. Does Corey Lewandowski stick around?
Well, as you know, I brought her a replacement blankie kind of as a peace offering. I don't know if Corey stays around. Obviously, that's a question for the new Secretary, Markwayne Mullin, and the White House. So I don't know anything about that. I didn't really even want to ask that question, quite frankly, but I was shocked that when my colleague, Sidney Kamlager-Dove, asked that question, that she didn't just say no. Right? Like, I thought I was giving her a layup. Like, hey, you know, your answer was a little muddled. Why don't you just clear up the record? Just say no. And she couldn't even take that easy question. And so, look, again, I think her performances in both the Senate and the House yesterday, you know, the president likes to watch TV. We know he's watching. And I think what he saw, he didn't like.